Stranger by Albert Camus. Part 1, Chapter 1. Mother died today. Or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure. The telegram from the home says, "Your mother passed away. Funeral tomorrow. Deep sympathy." Which leaves the matter doubtful. It could have been yesterday. The home for aged persons is at Marengo, some 50 miles from Algiers. With the 2 o'clock bus, I should get there well before nightfall. Then I can spend the night there, keeping the usual vigil beside the body, and be back here by tomorrow evening. I have fixed up with my employer for 2 days' leave. Obviously, under the circumstances, he couldn't refuse. Still, I had an idea he looked annoyed, and I said without thinking, "Sorry, sir, but it's not my fault, you know." Afterwards, it struck me I needn't have said that. I had no reason to excuse myself. It was up to him to express his sympathy and so forth. Probably he will do so the day after tomorrow, when he sees me in black. For the present, it's almost as if Mother weren't really dead. The funeral will bring it home to me, put an official seal on it, so to speak. I took the 2 o'clock bus. It was a blazing hot afternoon. I'd lunched as usual at Celeste's restaurant. Everyone was most kind, and Celeste said to me, "There's no one like a mother." When I left, they came with me to the door. It was something of a rush getting away, as at the last moment I had to call in at Emmanuel's place to borrow his black tie and mourning band. He lost his uncle a few months ago. I had to run to catch the bus. I suppose it was my hurrying like that, what with the glare off the road and from the sky, the reek of gasoline, and the jolts that made me feel so drowsy. Anyhow, I slept most of the way. When I woke, I was leaning against a soldier. He grinned and asked me if I'd come from a long way off, and I just nodded to cut things short. I wasn't in a mood for talking. The home is a little over a mile from the village. I went there on foot. I asked her to be allowed to see Mother at once, but the doorkeeper told me I must see the warden first. He wasn't free, and I had to wait a bit. The doorkeeper chatted with me while I waited. Then he led me to the office. The warden was a very small man with grey hair and a legion of ardor set in his buttonhole. He gave me a long look with his watery blue eyes. Then we shook hands, and he held mine so long that I began to feel embarrassed. After that, he consulted a register on his table and said, "Madame Masson entered the home 3 years ago. She had no private means and depended entirely on you." I had a feeling he was blaming me for something and started to explain, but he cut me short. "There's no need to excuse yourself, my boy. I've looked up the record, and obviously you weren't in a position to see that she was properly cared for. She needed someone to be with her all the time, and young men in jobs like yours don't get too much pay. In any case, she was much happier in the home." I said, "Yes, sir, I'm sure of that." Then he added, "She had good friends here, you know, old folks like yourself, and one gets on better with people of one's own generation. You're much too young. You couldn't have been much of a companion to her." That was so. When we lived together, Mother was always watching me, but we hardly ever talked. During her first few weeks at the home, she used to cry a good deal, but that was only because she hadn't settled down. After a month or 2, she'd have cried if she'd been told to leave the home, because this too would have been in French. That was why during the last year I seldom went to see her. Also, it would have meant losing my Sunday, not to mention the trouble of going to the bus, getting my ticket, and spending 2 hours on the journey each way. The warden went on talking, but I didn't pay much attention. Finally, he said, "Now, I suppose you'd like to see your mother." I rose without replying, and he led me the way to the door. As we were going down the stairs, he explained, "I've had the body moved to our little mortuary, so as not to upset the other old people, you understand. Every time there's a death there, they're in a nervous state for 2 or 3 days, which means, of course, extra work and worry for our staff." We crossed a courtyard where there were a number of old men talking amongst themselves in little groups. They fell silent as we came up with them, then behind our backs the chattering began again. The voices reminded me of parakeets in a cage, only the sound wasn't quite so shrill. The warden stopped outside the entrance of a small, low building. "So here I leave you, Monsieur Masson. If you want me for anything, you'll find me in my office." tomorrow morning that will enable you to spend the night beside your mother's coffin, as no doubt you would wish to do. Just one more thing. I gathered from your mother's friends that she wished to be buried with the rites of the church. I've made arrangements for this, but I thought I should let you know. I thanked him. So far as I knew, my mother, though not a professed atheist, had never given a thought to religion in her life. I entered the mortuary. It was a bright, spotlessly clean room with whitewashed walls and a big skylight. The furniture consisted of some chairs and trestles. Two of the latter stood open in the center of the room. The coffin rested on them. The lid was in place, but the screws had been given only a few turns, and the nickeled end stuck out above the wood, which was stained dark walnut. An Arab woman, a nurse I suppose, was sitting beside the pile. She was wearing a blue smock and had a rather gaudy scarf wound round her hair. Just then the keeper came up behind me. He'd evidently been running as he was a little out of breath. We put the lid on, but I was told to unscrew it when you came so that you could see her. While he was going up to the coffin, I told him not to trouble. "Eh, what's that?" he exclaimed. "You don't want me to?" "No," I said. He put back the screwdriver in his pocket and stared at me. I realized then that I shouldn't have said no, and it made me rather embarrassed. After eyeing me for some moments, he asked, "Why not?" But he didn't sound reproachful. He simply wanted to know. "Well, really, I couldn't say," I answered. He began twiddling his white moustache. Then, without looking at me, he said gently, "I understand." He was a pleasant-looking man with blue eyes and ruddy cheeks. He drew up a chair for me near the coffin and seated himself just behind. The nurse got up and moved toward the door. As she was going by, the keeper whispered in my ear, "It's a tumor she has, poor thing." I looked at her more carefully, and I noticed that she had a bandage round her head, just below her eyes. It lay quite flat across the bridge of her nose, and one saw hardly anything of her face except that strip of whiteness. As soon as she had gone, the keeper rose. "Now I'll leave you to yourself." I don't know whether I made some gesture, but instead of going, he halted behind my chair. The sensation of someone posted at my back made me uncomfortable. The sun was getting low, and the whole room was flooded with a pleasant, mellow light. Two hornets were buzzing overhead against the skylight. I was so sleepy I could hardly keep my eyes open. Without looking round, I asked the keeper how long he'd been at the home. 5 years. The answer came so pat that one could have thought he'd been expecting my question. That started him off, and he became quite chatty. If anyone had told him 10 years ago that he'd end his days as a doorkeeper at a home at Marengo, he'd never have believed it. He was 64, he said, and hailed from Paris. When he said that, I broke in. "Ah, you don't come from here." I remembered then that, before taking me to the warden, he told me something about Mother. He had said she'd have to be buried mighty quickly because of the heat in these parts, especially down in the plain. At Paris they keep the body for 3 days, sometimes 4. After that he had mentioned that he'd spent the best part of his life in Paris, and could never manage to forget it. "Here," he said, "things have to go with a rush like. You've hardly time to get used to the After that, I didn't pay much more attention to him. He went out, brought some chairs, and set them out round the coffin. On one he placed a coffee pot and 10 or a dozen cups. Then he sat down facing me on the far side of Mother. The nurse was at the other end of the room with her back to me. I couldn't see what she was doing, but by the way her arms moved, I guessed that she was knitting. I was feeling very comfortable. The coffee had warmed me up, and through the open door came scents of flowers and breaths of cool night air. I think I dozed off for a while. I was awakened by an odd rustling in my ears. After having had my eyes closed, I had a feeling that the light had grown even stronger than before. There wasn't a trace of shadow anywhere, and every object, each curve or angle, seemed to score its outline on one's eyes. The old people, Mother's friends, were coming in. I counted 10 in all, gliding almost soundlessly through the bleak white glare. None of the chairs creaked when they sat down. Never in my life had I seen anyone so clearly as I saw these people. Not a detail of their clothes or features escaped me, and yet I couldn't hear them, and it was hard to believe they really existed. Nearly all the women wore aprons, and the strings drawn tight round their waists made their big stomachs bulge still more. I had never yet noticed what big bulges old women usually have. Most of the men, however, were as thin as flakes, and they all carried sticks. What struck me most about their faces was that one couldn't see their eyes, only a dull glow in a sort of nest of wrinkles. On sitting down, they looked at me and wagged their heads awkwardly, their lips sucked in between their toothless gums. I couldn't decide if they were greeting me and trying to say something, or if it was due to some infirmity of age. I inclined to think that they were greeting me after their fashion, but it had a queer effect seeing all these old fellows grouped round the keeper, solemnly eyeing me and dandling their heads from side to side. For a moment I had an absurd impression that they had come to sit in judgment on me. A few minutes later one of the women started weeping. She was in the second row and I couldn't see her face because of another woman in front. At regular intervals she emitted a little choking sob. One had a feeling she would never stop. The others didn't seem to notice. They sat in silence, slumped in their chairs, staring at the coffin or at their walking sticks or any other object sitting just in front of them, and never took their eyes off it. And still the woman sobbed. I was rather surprised, as I didn't know who she was. I wanted her to stop crying, but dared not speak to her. After a while, the keeper bent toward her and whispered in her ear, but she merely shook her head and mumbled something I couldn't catch and went on sobbing as steadily as before. The keeper got up and moved his chair beside mine. At first he kept silent. Then, without looking at me, he explained. She was devoted to your mother. She says your mother was her only friend in the world, and now she's all alone. I had nothing to say, and the silence lasted quite a while. Presently the woman's sighs and sobs became less frequent, and after blowing her nose and snuffling for some minutes, she too fell silent. I'd ceased feeling sleepy, but I was very tired and my legs were aching badly. And now I realized that the silence of these people was telling on my nerves. The only sound was a rather queer one. It came only now and then, and at first I was puzzled by it. However, after listening attentively, I guessed what it was. The old men were sucking at the insides of their cheeks, and this caused the old wheezing noises that had mystified me. They were so much absorbed in the thoughts that they didn't know what they were up to. I even had an impression that the dead body in their midst meant nothing to them at all. But now I suspect that I was mistaken about this. We all drank the coffee, which the keeper handed round. After that I can't remember much. Somehow the night went by. I can recall only one moment. I had opened my eyes and I saw the old men sleeping hunched up on their chairs, with one exception. Resting his chin on his hands clasped around his stick, he was staring hard at me as if he had been waiting for me to wake. Then I fell asleep again. I woke up after a bit, because the ache in my legs had developed into a sort of cramp. There was a glimmer of dawn above the skylight. A minute or two later, one of the old men woke up and coughed repeatedly. He spat into a big check handkerchief, and each time he spat it sounded as if he were retching. This woke the others, and the keeper told them it was time to make a move. They all got up at once, their faces were ashen grey after the long, uneasy vigil. To my surprise, each of them shook hands with me, as though this night together, in which we hadn't exchanged a word, had created a kind of He was in black with pinstripe trousers. He picked up the telephone receiver and looked at me. The undertaker's men arrived some moments ago, and they will be going to the mortuary to screw down the coffin. Shall I tell them to wait for you to have a last glimpse of your mother? No, I said. He spoke into the receiver, lowering his voice. That's all right. Tell the men to go there now. He then informed me that he was going to attend the funeral, and I thanked him. Sitting down behind his desk, he crossed his short legs and leaned back. Besides the nurse on duty, he told me he and I would be the only mourners at the funeral. It was a rule of the home that inmates shouldn't attend funerals, though there was no objection to letting some of them sit up beside the coffin the night before. It's for their own sakes, he explained, to spare their feelings, but in this particular instance I've given permission to an old friend of your mother to come with us. His name is Thomas Perez. The warden smiled. It's a rather touching little story in its way. He and your mother had become almost inseparable. The other old people used to tease Perez about having a fiancée. When are you going to marry her? They'd ask. He'd turn it with a laugh. It was a standing joke, in fact. So, as you can guess, he feels very badly about your mother's death. I thought I couldn't decently refuse him permission to attend the funeral, but on our medical officer's advice, I forbade him to sit up beside the body last night. For some time we sat there without speaking. Then the warden got up and went to the window. Presently he said, there's the portrait from Marengo. He's a bit ahead of time. He warned me that it would take us a good 3/4 of an hour walking to the church, which was in the village. Then we went downstairs. The priest was waiting just outside the mortuary door. With him were 2 acolytes, one of whom had a censer. The priest was stooping over him, adjusting the length of the silver chain on which it hung. When he saw us, he straightened up and said a few words to me, addressing me as my son. Then he led the way into the mortuary. I noticed at once that 4 men in black were standing behind the coffin, and the screws in the lid had now been driven home. At the same moment I heard the warden remark that the hearse had arrived, and the priest starting his prayers. Then everybody made a move. Holding a strip of black cloth, the 4 men approached the coffin, while the priest, the boys, and myself filed out. A lady I hadn't seen before was standing by the door. This is Monsieur Marcel, the warden said to her. I didn't catch her name, but I gathered she was a nursing sister attached to the home. When I was introduced, she bowed without the trace of a smile on her long, gaunt face. We stood aside from the doorway to let the coffin by, then following the bearers down a corridor, we came to the front entrance where a hearse was waiting. Oblong, glossy, varnished black all over, it vaguely reminded me of the pen trays in the office. Beside the hearse stood a quaintly dressed little man whose duty it was, I understood, to supervise the funeral as a sort of master of ceremonies. Near him, looking constrained, almost bashful, was old M. Perez, my mother's special friend. He wore a soft felt hat with a pudding basin crown and a very wide brim. He whisked it off the moment the coffin emerged from the doorway. Trousers that concertinaed on his shoes, a black tie much too small for his high white double collar. Under a bulbous, pimply nose, his lips were trembling, but what caught my attention most was his ears, pendulous scarlet ears that showed up like blobs of sealing wax on the batter of his cheeks and were framed in wisps of silky white hair. The undertaker's phaeton shepherded us to our places, with the priest in front of the hearse and the 4 men in black on each side of it. The warden and myself came next in, bringing up the rear old Perez and the nurse. The sky was already a blaze of light and the air stroking up rapidly. I felt the first waves of heat lapping my back, and my dark suit made things worse. I couldn't imagine why we waited so long for getting underway. Old Perez, who had put on his hat, took it off again. I had turned slightly in his direction and was looking at him when the warden started telling me more about him. I remember his saying that old Perez and my mother used often to have a longish stroll together in the cool of the evening. Sometimes they went as far as the village, accompanied by a nurse, of course. I looked at the countryside, the long lines of cypresses sloping up toward the skyline and the hills, the hot red soil dappled with vivid green, and here and there a lonely house sharply outlined against the light. And I could understand the mother's feelings. Evenings in these parts must be a sort of mournful solace. Now, in the full glare of the morning sun, with everything shimmering in the heat haze, there was something inhuman, discouraging about this landscape. the same time he wiped the crown of his head with a handkerchief that he held in his left hand, while with his right he tilted up his hat. I asked him what he'd said. He pointed upward. "Sun's pretty bad today, ain't it?" "Yes," I said. After a while he asked, "Is it your mother we're burying?" "Yes," I said again. "What was her age?" "Well, she was getting on. As a matter of fact, I didn't know exactly how old she was." After that he kept silent. Looking back, I saw Perez limping along some 50 yards behind. He was swinging his big felt hat at arm's length, trying to make the pace. I also had a look at the warden. He was walking with carefully measured steps, economizing every gesture. Beads of perspiration glistened on his forehead, but he didn't wipe them off. I had an impression that our little procession was moving slightly faster. Wherever I looked, I saw the same sun-drenched countryside, and the sky was so dazzling that I dared not raise my eyes. Presently we struck a patch of freshly tarred road. A shimmer of heat played over it, and one's feet squelched at each step, leaving bright black gashes. In front, the coachman's glossy black hat looked like a lump of the same sticky substance, poised above the hearse. It gave one a queer, dreamlike impression, that blue-white glare overhead and all this blackness round one. The sleek black of the hearse, the dull black of the men's clothes, and the silvery black gashes in the road. And then there were the smells of hot leather and horse dung from the hearse, veined with whiffs of incense smoke. What with these and the hangover from a poor night's sleep, I found my eyes and thoughts growing blurred. I looked back again. Perez seemed very far away now, almost hidden by the heat. Haze. Then, abruptly, he disappeared altogether. After puzzling over it for a bit, I guessed that he had turned off the road into the fields. Then I noticed that there was a bend of the road a little way ahead. Obviously, Perez, who knew the district well, had taken a shortcut so as to catch up with us. He rejoined us soon after we were round the bend, then began to lose ground again. He took another shortcut and met us again farther on. In fact, this happened several times during the next half hour. But soon I lost interest in his movements. My temples were throbbing, and I could hardly drag myself along. After that, everything went with a rush, and also with such precision and matter-of-factness that I remember hardly any details, except that when we were on the outskirts of the village, the nurse had said something to me. Her voice took me by surprise. It didn't match her face at all. It was musical and slightly tremulous. What she said was, "If you go too slowly, there's the risk of a heat stroke. But if you go too fast, you perspire, and the cool air in the church gives you a chill." I saw her point. Either way, one was in for it. Some other memories of the funeral have stuck in my mind. The old boy's face, for instance, when he caught up with us for the last time, just outside the village. His eyes were streaming with tears of exhaustion or distress, or both together. But because of the wrinkles, they couldn't flow down. They spread out, crisscrossed, and formed a smooth gloss on the old, worn face. And I can remember the look of the church, the villagers in the street, the red geraniums on the graves, Perez's fainting fit. He crumpled up like a rag doll, the tawny red earth pattering on Mother's coffin, the bits of white roots mixed up with it. Then more people, voices, the wait outside a cafe for the bus, the rumble of the engine